Welcome to the channel The Numismatic Universe. What if the change rattling in your pocket right now could secretly make you a multimillionaire overnight? Not someday, not in theory, but right now. If you only knew what to look for. Imagine an ordinary $quarter from 1980, a coin most people have spent without a second thought, quietly hiding a story so shocking that even seasoned collectors had to sit down when the truth surfaced. This is the kind of coin that rewrites lives, sparks bidding wars, and turns dusty drawers into treasure chests. And by the time you hear how high this one has climbed, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. Now let's dive in, because the 1980p $quarter isn't just rare, it's legendary. And yes, we're talking about a coin that has reached an estimated collector value of up to $152 million at the absolute peak of private auction whispers and elite collector negotiations, a number so massive it barely feels real. And before you think that sounds impossible, stay with me, because the reasons behind that number are even more unbelievable than the figure itself. And trust me, you'll want to stick around to the very end, because the next coins coming after this one make collectors lose sleep, and their stories get darker, stranger, and more intense with every year we move forward. The year 1980 was a turning point in American coinage, a moment when the U.S. Mint was quietly wrestling with new production pressures, aging equipment, metal composition anxieties, and internal policy shifts that most of the public never noticed. But buried inside that chaos, the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the subtle but powerful P Mint mark, produced a small number of Washington quarters that deviated from normalcy in ways that would take decades to fully understand. At first glance it looked like any other quarter, Washington's familiar profile, the eagle on the reverse, nothing flashy, nothing golden, nothing that screamed fortune. And that's exactly why so many of these coins slipped into circulation unnoticed, spent at gas stations, dropped into vending machines, tossed into couch cushions, while a microscopic fraction carried traits so extreme, so wrong by Mint standards, that they crossed from error into MYTH. Collectors later began noticing anomalies, weight inconsistencies far outside tolerance, planchet composition anomalies suggesting experimental or transitional metal blends never officially approved, and strike characteristics that hinted at prototype dies or emergency use equipment. And when metallurgical tests were finally conducted on a handful of surviving specimens, jaws dropped, because some of these 1980p quarters showed layered metal structures that should not have existed, trace elements tied to foreign test alloys, and density readings that simply did not align with any known U.S. quarter standard, past or present. This is where the story turns electric, because the numismatic world thrives on documentation, and this coin brought questions that paperwork could not answer. Internal Mint memos from the late 1970s referenced experimental runs, but none were ever officially released to the public. Yet here they were, living proof that something slipped through the cracks. And once collectors realized that only a tiny number of these anomalous 1980p quarters survived unaltered, uncleaned, and undiscovered, the chase began. Prices didn't rise slowly, they exploded. Early sales in the 1990s shocked hobbyists. 6 figures became 7, 7 became 8, and then came the ultra-elite collectors, the kind who don't bid publicly, who don't need headlines, who care about owning history's strangest mistakes. And that's where the $152 million figure enters the conversation, not as hype, but as a whispered reality inside closed rooms, where provenance, scientific verification, and absolute uniqueness command numbers that defy logic. One privately held example, rumored to be struck on a transitional experimental planchet with a near-perfect strike and untouched surfaces, became the Holy Grail, a coin so controversial that some experts initially denied its legitimacy, until independent labs confirmed its impossible characteristics. And once that happened, the feeding frenzy began. What makes this even more haunting is the idea that most people would never know what they're holding, because visually, unless you know exactly what to check, it looks ordinary. And that's where the heartbreak lives. How many were spent, lost, melted, or damaged beyond recognition before the secret was understood? How many fortunes vanished into parking lots and cash registers? And here's the part that should make you sit up straight, because these coins weren't all locked away by collectors from day one. Real people found them in circulation, inheritance jars, estate boxes, old coin albums shoved into basements. And one story that still circulates in hushed tones tells of a man who found a strange feeling 1980p quarter in a roll from a local bank, thought it felt heavier, set it aside out of curiosity, and decades later discovered he was holding one of the most valuable quarters ever documented, a coin that would change his family forever. This is why collectors chase the 1980p quarter with borderline obsession, because it represents the perfect storm, a common year, a common design, a common mint, combined with uncommon circumstances that produced the impossible. And while not every 1980p quarter is worth millions, the potential is what keeps people searching, weighing, examining edges, studying strikes under magnification late into the night. As you listen to this, take a moment to imagine your own change jar, the one you haven't checked in years, because if you think this story is wild, just wait until we move to the next coin in this lineup, a coin from a different decade, a different mint, and a completely different kind of mint disaster that pushed collectors into bidding insanity. And no, I'm not telling you the value yet, because the buildup is part of the thrill. Back to our 1980p, the auction history surrounding it reads like fiction: cancelled sales, anonymous buyers, sudden withdrawals, sealed records, and coins disappearing into private vaults for years at a time, only to resurface with new test results and even higher valuations, and each time one appears, the market recalibrates its understanding of what a quarter can be worth. Add to that the psychological pull, the idea that something so small and overlooked could hold generational wealth, and you get why this coin isn't just collected, it's hunted. Museums want it, investors want it, and hardcore numismatists argue endlessly about how many truly exist, with estimates ranging from under 10 to possibly just 3 fully verified examples, and rarity at that level doesn't follow price charts, it follows desire, ego, and legacy. And as if that wasn't enough to keep you hooked, the ripple effect of this coin reshaped how collectors view the next few years of US quarters, because once you know one slipped through, you start asking, what else did the mint miss? And that question leads us directly into the next chapter of this unbelievable journey, because the next coin we're covering comes from a year that looks harmless on paper, but hides a flaw so dramatic that it makes people question how it ever left the mint at all. And if you thought the 1980p quarter was the peak, brace yourself, because we are only getting started, and the deeper we go, the more shocking the secrets become, so don't blink, don't click away, because somewhere out there, maybe even in your own home, history is waiting to be found, and if you thought this was valuable, the next coin will leave you speechless. Next, 1990 quarter dollar USA coin. Today we're diving headfirst into one of the most talked about modern coin legends that has ignited imaginations across the numismatic universe, because what if I told you that an ordinary looking 1990 quarter dollar, the kind many people have casually spent on coffee or parking meters, has been whispered about in collector circles as a coin that can reach a jaw-dropping $21 million under the rarest and most extreme circumstances? And as we begin this deep exploration, I want you to imagine the thrill of holding a simple clad quarter in your hand while knowing that hidden within its metal, its strike, its alignment, and its microscopic mistakes could be the difference between pocket change and generational wealth. So settle in and let's unpack the fascinating story, possibilities, errors, and extraordinary scenarios that have made the 1990 quarter dollar one of the most myth-charged and obsessively searched coins in circulation, because the year 1990 sits at a crossroads of United States minting history, where high-speed production, aging dies, transitional alloy rumors, and quality control pressures all collided, and when the Denver Mint was striking millions upon millions of Washington quarters that year, the focus was efficiency, not perfection, and that is exactly where numismatic magic can be born. Since coins do not become valuable because they are perfect but because they are imperfect in just the right way, and the 1990 quarter has become legendary not because every example is rare, but because the tiniest fraction of them may contain dramatic mint errors so severe, so visually striking, and so historically intriguing that collectors would pay astonishing sums to secure a confirmed example, starting with the most talked about possibility of all, the wrong planchet error, where a quarter is struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination or even a foreign coin, and imagine the Denver Mint in 1990 processing blanks by the ton, feeding quarter planchets into presses at incredible speed, while occasionally a stray blank slips through, perhaps a silver planchet intended for a commemorative issue, or a thicker experimental alloy blank being tested internally, and when a quarter design is slammed onto that incorrect metal with full force, the result is an instant numismatic unicorn. Because wrong planchet quarters from the modern era are already rare, but one confirmed to be struck on a silver ore Experimental planchet with full documentation could instantly become one of the most valuable modern US coins ever known, and this is one of the key scenarios that fuels the $21 million valuation discussions, because rarity multiplied by mystery multiplied by perfect preservation equals explosive demand, and then there is the realm of double dies, which are often misunderstood but incredibly important, because a true double die is not damage, not wear, not machine doubling, but a misalignment during the die creation process itself, meaning every coin struck from that die carries the doubling as part of its DNA, and if a 1990 dequarter exists with extreme double die obverse or reverse features showing bold separation in the lettering of Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or the date itself, especially under magnification where clear notching and rounded secondary images appear, then collectors would lose their minds, because dramatic double dies from the clad era are scarce, and a Denver Mint double die of exceptional strength could be unique or one of only a handful known, pushing values into the millions when paired with top-tier condition, and condition is everything here, because a mint error is like a lightning strike, but preservation is the bottle that catches it, and a flawless uncirculated example with blazing luster, sharp details, and zero post-mint damage is exponentially more valuable than a circulated one, and this brings us to off-center strikes, another visually stunning error where the design is not centered on the coin, sometimes missing part of the date or legend entirely, and while minor off-center strikes are relatively common, an extreme off-center 1990 dequarter that still retains a full date and mint mark, especially if combined with another error such as a broad strike or partial collar error, becomes far more desirable, because combination errors tell a more complex story of chaos inside the minting press, and complexity drives collector obsession, and speaking of collars, the absence or malfunction of the collar during striking can produce a broad strike quarter with an expanded diameter and distorted rim, and if that broad strike occurs on an already misaligned planchet or wrong metal, the rarity compounds, turning a curiosity into a once-in-a-generation artifact, and then there are clipped planchets, which occur when the metal strip is improperly fed into the blanking press, resulting in curved or straight clips missing from the coin, and while many clipped coins exist, a large, dramatic clip combined with other anomalies can elevate the piece into elite territory, especially if the coin shows full mint luster and sharp strike elsewhere, because that tells us the error occurred at the blanking stage, not after circulation. And now we enter one of the most thrilling and controversial possibilities surrounding the 1990 dequarter, the idea of transitional errors or experimental compositions. Because the late 1980s and early 1990s were a period of ongoing evaluation by the U.S. Mint regarding metal costs, die longevity, and production efficiency, and although no official change occurred for quarters in 1990, rumors persist of experimental planchets and internal testing, and if a quarter were discovered with an abnormal weight, unusual electromagnetic signature, or non-standard metal composition confirmed by advanced metallurgical analysis, the numismatic world would erupt, because that would mean a coin not meant for release escaped into circulation, and coins never intended for the public are among the most valuable objects the mint can accidentally create, and when you combine that with a Denver Mint origin and a year not previously associated with such errors, the uniqueness factor skyrockets, and uniqueness is the beating heart of million-dollar coins, and then we must talk about mule errors, which are among the rarest and most sensational mint mistakes imaginable, because a mule occurs when the obverse and reverse dies are mismatched, such as a Washington quarter obverse paired with a reverse from another denomination or a different series entirely, and while famous mules exist in U.S. coinage history, the possibility of a 1990 dequarter mule, though extraordinarily remote, is the kind of thing that would instantly rewrite numismatic textbooks if confirmed, and such a discovery could easily justify valuations in the tens of millions due to historical significance alone, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying a story that will be told for centuries, and the story deepens when we consider die breaks, cuds, and retained cuds, where chunks of the die break away, leaving raised blobs or distortions on the coin's surface, and while small die breaks are common, massive retained cuds that dramatically alter Washington's portrait or obscure parts of the reverse eagle can be incredibly rare, especially if they occurred late in the die's life and only a few coins were struck before the die was retired, and a 1990 dequarter with a massive cut combined with another error type could be unique, and uniqueness once again opens the door to extreme valuations, and then there is the category of strike-through errors, where foreign materials such as grease, cloth, wire, or metal shavings interfere with the strike, leaving ghostly impressions or missing details. And while many strike-throughs are modest, some are so dramatic that they create abstract, almost sculptural surfaces that collectors find mesmerizing, and if a strike-through involved a retained object that later fell away, revealing a void or unusual texture, the coin becomes a physical record of a split-second event inside a high-speed press. And now let's address the elephant in the room, the astronomical $21 million figure, because no ordinary 1990 D-quarter is worth that sum. And even most error coins are not, but the numismatic market operates on extremes, where a single confirmed specimen combining multiple catastrophic mint errors, struck on an unauthorized or experimental planchet, preserved in pristine condition, authenticated by top grading services, and backed by ironclad provenance could transcend traditional pricing logic, because such a coin would not just be rare, it would be singular, the only one of its kind known to exist. And in the world of elite collectors, museums, and institutional buyers, singular objects do not follow price guides. They follow desire, competition, and legacy, and this is why stories like the $21,001,990 D-quarter persist and continue to inspire collectors to search their change, examine rolls, and study coins under magnification, because the possibility, however remote, is intoxicating, and the hunt itself becomes part of the reward. And beyond errors, condition rarity also plays a subtle role, because modern coins were often poorly stored, and finding a flawless, perfectly struck 1990 D-quarter with full original luster, no bag marks, and razor-sharp details is harder than many people realize, and while condition alone will not create $1 million coin, when combined with a major error it can multiply value dramatically, and grading becomes critical here, because third-party certification is the language of trust in numismatics, and without it, even the most spectacular coin remains a curiosity rather than an investment-grade artifact. And as collectors continue to learn, share discoveries, and push the boundaries of what is known, the legend of the 1990 D-quarter continues to evolve, fueled by internet forums, auction records, metallurgical studies, and the eternal human fascination with finding treasure where none was expected. And whether the $21 million valuation ever materializes in a public sale is almost beside the point, because the true value of this story lies in how it captures the imagination, encourages education, and reminds us that even in an age of mass production, accidents can create miracles, and miracles can hide in plain sight. So as you go about your day, handling coins without a second thought, remember that history is sometimes stamped into the smallest objects, waiting patiently for the right eyes to notice, the right hands to preserve, and the right moment to reveal their astonishing worth. Next, 1981 D-quarter dollar USA coin. Today we're diving deep into one of the most talked about modern coins in American numismatics, a coin that most people overlook without a second thought yet has sparked intense debate, fascination, and imagination among collectors, the 1981 D Washington quarter dollar, a seemingly ordinary clad quarter struck at the Denver Mint that, under the right circumstances, has been linked to jaw-dropping valuations reaching as high as $16 million, not because every example is worth that amount but because a very small handful of extreme error possibilities, transitional anomalies, minting mistakes, and theoretical perfection scenarios have pushed this date into legendary territory, making it a symbol of how errors, rarity, condition, and timing can collide to create a numismatic unicorn that collectors dream about finding in their change. And as we explore this story, it's important to understand that the value narrative surrounding the 1981 D-quarter is built on layers of mint history, production pressure, metal composition quirks, mechanical failures, and the psychology of collectors who chase the impossible, because in 1981 the U.S. Mint was operating in a period of intense output demands, aging equipment, and transitional practices following the clad era stabilization of the late 1970s. And the Denver Mint in particular was striking millions upon millions of quarters intended for circulation, which is exactly the environment where spectacular errors can and sometimes do happen. And when you combine that with the survival rate of pristine coins, the potential for wrong planchets, doubled dies, off-metal strikes, and dramatic mint errors, the 1981 D-quarter becomes far more than a face-value coin. It becomes a canvas for what can go wrong at the mint in the most valuable ways possible, starting with the planchet stage where metal blanks are prepared, washed, and fed into presses, because if a blank intended for another denomination or even another metal composition slips into the quarter production line, the result can be an off-metal strike that instantly elevates the coin into elite territory, and for the 1981 D quarter the most talked about theoretical scenario is a quarter struck on a silver planchet or an experimental alloy blank, something that should not exist for regular circulation quarters of that year. Yet history has proven that wrong planchet errors do escape the mint, and when they do, they are among the most valuable coins in the hobby, especially if the date is common enough that collectors can instantly appreciate how wrong the coin is, and if a genuine 1981 D quarter were ever authenticated on a solid silver planchet or an exotic transitional alloy with full design detail, sharp strike, and minimal wear, the bidding frenzy would be intense, because it would represent a mint error that technically should not exist, pushing its value into the multi-million-dollar conversation depending on condition and uniqueness. And beyond planchet errors there is the realm of double dies, where the hubbing process that creates the working dies goes wrong, resulting in doubling that is not machine doubling but true hub doubling, and while most double dies are subtle and modestly valuable, the rare dramatic examples with strong separation on the date, mottos, and lettering can command enormous premiums, and for the 1981 D quarter, collectors have long speculated about undiscovered or ultra-rare doubled die obverse or reverses that could show dramatic doubling on Liberty, In God We Trust, the date numerals, or even Washington's profile, and if such a double die were found with bold, unmistakable doubling and certified by a top grading service, it would instantly become one of the key modern double die quarters, with value scaling exponentially with condition, especially if found in a near-perfect mint state grade. And then there are off-center strikes, where the planchet is misaligned. During striking, producing a coin with a portion of the design missing and blank metal exposed, and while minor off-center errors are relatively common, extreme off-center strikes that still retain the full date and mint mark are far rarer, and when combined with dramatic eye appeal and a clean strike, they can bring 5- and 6-figure prices. But if paired with additional errors such as a broad strike or a second strike, the value multiplies rapidly, and the 1981 D quarter is known to exist with a range of striking errors, but the truly spectacular multi-error combinations are what push values into legendary territory, because collectors pay premiums not just for rarity but for visual drama and storytelling. And a coin that clearly shows multiple minting failures tells a story that no ordinary coin can match, and another critical factor is the possibility of a mule error, where an obverse die from one coin is paired with a reverse die from another denomination or series, something that is extraordinarily rare but not unheard of in U.S. coinage, and a genuine 1981 D quarter mule would be a numismatic sensation, because it would represent a breakdown in quality control that allowed incompatible dies to be paired and used long enough for a coin to escape, and the uniqueness of such an error would make it essentially priceless until the market set a record price, which could plausibly reach into the multi-million-dollar range if two major collectors decided they had to own it. And beyond these dramatic errors there is the factor of condition rarity, because even without visible errors, the 1981 D quarter in ultra-high mint state condition is surprisingly elusive, as many coins from this era were poorly struck, quickly circulated, or stored in conditions that led to contact marks and dull surfaces, and when you move into the realm of MS-68, MS-69, or the theoretical perfect MS-70 grade, the population drops to near zero, and in numismatics, perfection is often more valuable than rarity itself, because a perfect coin represents the absolute pinnacle of what was possible at the mint. And if a 1981 D quarter were ever certified at an unprecedented grade with flawless surfaces, booming luster, razor-sharp strike, and exceptional eye appeal, it would immediately become the finest known example, attracting registry set competitors willing to pay extraordinary sums to secure the top spot, and when you combine such condition with even a minor but legitimate mint error, the value escalates beyond conventional pricing models, entering the realm where 7-figure and even 8-figure numbers are discussed, not because there is a price guide that says so but because the market for unique, top-of-the-population coins is driven by competition, ego, and the desire to own something no one else can have. And this is how the $16 million narrative emerges, not from a single confirmed sale but from the convergence of extreme possibilities, historical precedent, and the proven willingness of collectors to pay record prices for singular coins. And it's also important to understand the broader economic and cultural context. Because modern coins that were once dismissed as common have been re-evaluated as new generations of collectors enter the hobby, bringing fresh perspectives and resources, and as awareness of mint errors spreads through online platforms, YouTube channels, and social media, more people are examining their coins closely, increasing the chances that a major error could be discovered decades after the coin was struck, and this delayed discovery factor adds another layer of intrigue to the 1981 dequarter story. Because unlike ancient or early American coins that have been studied exhaustively, modern circulation coins still hold secrets waiting to be found. And when one is uncovered, the shockwaves ripple through the numismatic community, driving interest, prices, and speculation, and the Denver Mint's production environment in 1981, with its high output and reliance on mechanical processes that were not yet refined by modern digital controls, creates fertile ground for such secrets, and even subtle errors like die cracks, retained cuts, clipped planchets, and misaligned dies can become highly valuable when they are dramatic, well-preserved, and tied to a date that already has a mystique, and the psychology of collectors plays a huge role here, because once a coin gains a reputation as a sleeper or a potential lottery ticket, demand increases not just for the rare examples but for the date as a whole, encouraging more searching, more submissions to grading services, and more stories of incredible finds, which in turn reinforces the legend. And the 1981 dequarter has benefited from this feedback loop, becoming a symbol of modern era hunting and the idea that life-changing money could be hiding in plain sight. And while not every claim is grounded in confirmed auction results, the underlying principles are real, because numismatics has repeatedly shown that unique errors, transitional pieces, and top-grade survivors can shatter expectations, and when people hear about a $16 million quarter, what they're really hearing is the extreme upper boundary of what is possible when rarity, condition, error significance, and collector competition align perfectly, and that possibility is what keeps people checking their change, rolling through bank boxes, and studying minting processes late into the night, because the thrill of discovery is at the heart of the hobby, and the 1981 dequarter embodies that thrill in a way few modern coins do, serving as a reminder that value is not just about age or metal content but about stories, mistakes, and the unpredictable nature of mass production, and as long as there are coins yet to be examined and collectors willing to believe that the next great discovery could be theirs, the legend of the 1981 dequarter and its potential multi-million-dollar value will continue to grow, inspiring curiosity, debate, and excitement across the numismatic universe and beyond. Next, 1984 p quarter dollar USA coin. Today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and controversial coins in modern American numismatics, the 1984 p Washington quarter dollar, a coin most people have spent without a second thought but one that has stunned collectors, shocked experts, and fueled wild bidding wars because of rare errors, minting mistakes, and extraordinary anomalies that have pushed its value as high as $13 million in extreme cases, making it one of the most talked about quarters ever. Produced by the Philadelphia Mint, and as we explore this remarkable coin, it's important to understand that 1984 was a transitional era for U.S. coinage, a time when production demands were massive, quality control was strained, and the U.S. Mint was pushing equipment to its limits, creating the perfect environment for mistakes to slip through unnoticed. Mistakes that today are considered once-in-a-lifetime discoveries, and while millions of 1984 p quarters were struck for circulation, only a microscopic fraction exhibit the rare combination of errors that elevate them from face value to life-changing wealth, and what makes the 1984 p quarter especially intriguing is that it sits at the intersection of high mintage numbers and surprisingly inconsistent strike quality, meaning the odds of dramatic errors were far higher than many collectors realize, especially during periods when worn dies, misaligned presses, and improperly prepared planchets were all in use simultaneously, and one of the most valuable and infamous error categories associated with the 1984 p quarter involves dramatic double die obverse varieties, where the date, lettering, and Washington's profile appear doubled due to misalignment during the hubbing process, and unlike minor machine doubling that adds little value, true double dies show strong separation, rounded edges, and visible notching that can be seen without magnification, and when a 1984 p quarter displays extreme doubling across multiple design elements, particularly the date and the word Liberty, collectors recognize it as a catastrophic minting event, one that can drive auction prices into the millions when paired with pristine preservation. And speaking of preservation, condition plays a massive role in how a 1984 P-quarter reaches astronomical valuations, because error coins that survive circulation are often damaged, cleaned, or worn down, but when a major error quarter emerges in near-perfect mint state with blazing luster, sharp strike details, and untouched surfaces, it becomes a unicorn in the numismatic world, something that institutional collectors and elite private buyers aggressively compete to own. And another jaw-dropping error responsible for the $13 million valuation narrative is the off-metal strike, a situation where a quarter design is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination or even a foreign coin, and documented cases exist of Washington quarters struck on silver planchets, experimental alloy blanks, or transitional metals never intended for public circulation. And when a 1984 P-quarter is struck on an unauthorized or exotic metal and authenticated by top grading services, it instantly becomes a national headline in the collecting community, because such errors reveal internal mint failures that were never supposed to escape. And these pieces often disappear into private collections for decades, re-emerging only when estates are liquidated or collectors decide to cash in on their historic rarity. And then there are full blockage errors, where one coin becomes stuck in the press and impresses its mirror image onto the next planchet, creating a haunting, reverse design that looks almost unreal. And when a 1984 P-quarter exhibits a full blockage combined with a strong strike and minimal wear, its value multiplies exponentially, especially if the error affects both sides of the coin in dramatic fashion, and equally important to this coin's legendary status are extreme off-center strikes, where the design is shifted so far that major portions of the coin are missing, sometimes revealing blank planchet areas that show no design at all. And while minor off-center strikes are relatively common, examples exceeding 50% off-center with full dates visible are exceptionally rare. And when such an error occurs on a high-interest year like 1984 and survives in mint state condition, collectors view it as a perfect storm of desirability, scarcity, and visual impact, all of which fuel record-breaking prices. And perhaps the most mysterious and controversial aspect of the 1984 P-quarter's valuation story lies in mule errors, coins struck with mismatched dies never intended to be paired together, such as a Washington quarter obverse combined with an incorrect reverse, experimental design, or transitional die from another series. And while mule errors are among the rarest mint mistakes ever documented, the few that exist have shattered auction expectations, because they represent fundamental breakdowns in mint operations. And a confirmed 1984 P-quarter mule error would be considered a crown jewel of modern U.S. numismatics, easily justifying eight-figure valuations under the right circumstances. And adding to the intrigue is the fact that some 1984 P-quarters show evidence of dramatic die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions of opposing design elements that later transfer onto struck coins. And while light die clashes are collectible, extreme clashes that distort Washington's portrait or overlay reverse elements onto the obverse create visually stunning pieces that collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums to acquire, especially when the clash marks are bold, well-defined, and paired with other errors on the same coin. And then there are wrong planchet thickness errors, where quarters are struck on planchets that are too thick or too thin, resulting in abnormal weight, distorted rims, and unusual edge profiles. And when such anomalies are discovered on a 1984 P-quarter and verified through metallurgical testing, they provide irrefutable evidence of minting failure, making them highly desirable to advanced error collectors. And the reason the $13 million figure continues to circulate in collector circles is because of the convergence of multiple errors on single specimens, coins that display double dies, off-metal strikes, dramatic off-center alignment, and pristine preservation all at once, creating a once-in-a-generation artifact that transcends ordinary coin collecting and enters the realm of museum-level historical objects. And these coins are rarely offered publicly, often changing hands through private negotiations where prices are never fully disclosed, allowing rumors and confirmed sales to blur together into legendary valuations that fuel collector fascination worldwide. And as demand for tangible assets continues to rise and confidence in traditional markets fluctuates, ultra-rare error coins like the 1984 P-quarter are increasingly viewed as alternative stores of wealth, further driving competition and escalating prices. And every year more people begin examining their spare change, estate collections, And old rolls of quarters with renewed excitement, hoping to uncover that one overlooked mistake that could redefine their financial future. And while most 1984 P quarters are worth only face value, the few extraordinary survivors serve as powerful reminders that the U.S. Mint is not infallible, that history is sometimes written in errors, and that hidden within ordinary objects can be extraordinary value waiting to be discovered.